All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure and great privilege to be hosting Professor Rabbi Professor, don't know which you go
Whatever you
by,
want.
Jeffrey Woolf is joining us. Are you in Barilan at the moment or you're at home?
No, I have, and I am actually in my home office, as you can see from the bullet gun behind me.
It's an impressive balagan. So
Thank
it's
you.
a great privilege and
Notice
pleasure.
the Sifrei Kodesh are on top. I make a point of making a statement.
It's great. We've been running a number of history series over the past, and it's great to be able to have not only a historian and a scholar, a rabbinic scholar as well, to be able to bring out some the history along with the Torah perspective. I don't want to go too much into your very impressive resume over here, but just that you are the one of the. I'm going through here. Is perhaps you could give me the exact. He is the associate professor in Talmud department at the Bar-Ilan University, specializing in the history of Halacha, medieval and Renaissance Jewish history, philosopher Rabbi Soloveitchik, and interaction between Judaism, Islam, and Christianity. So that's just
Keeps me busy.
Okay. Well, it's absolute pleasure to have you to be talking about the history of Italian Jewry. If I'm not mistaken, there are a couple of Italian Jews on the line as well, who hopefully are going to.
Yes.
I believe so. So I think, if I'm not mistaken, Rabbi Diveroli, I think is of Diveroli sounds pretty Italian to me. So I'm going to.
That's definitely
All right.
Italian.
So I'm going to hand over
Although
to
you
you.
never know. The truth is, you never know. This is going to sound like look, I'm full. Even though my ancestors came from some of my ancestors came from Spain. I'm about as Litvak as you can get, and certainly not Hasidic, although my wife is from a Hasidic family. But I will tell you that you never know where your ancestry leads you. About 20 years ago, I took a break from research just to do some genealogical work, which I'm going to come back to. And I found out that my family also lived for a long time in Italy. And I hope everybody's sitting. It turns out, and this blew me away when I found out, that I'm a descendant of the guy I wrote my doctorate about. But I found this out 20 years after I'd written the doctorate. So that was bizarre. That was really bizarre.
Well, Professor, thank you for making the time. We really appreciate it.
My
Please,
pleasure.
God, we will have you again sometime in the near future. And to that end, I will hand over to you.
Thank you. Let me do the share screen. Okay, let me just organize this. The truth of the matter is that if there is a good part to all of this craziness that we're living with, and that is the fact that that as a person for whom the teaching is life, it's given an opportunity to be able to, in fact, visit with wonderful people like you and to talk. By the way, I'm Rabbi Krebs. I'm sure is in charge of the muting the microphones. If there are questions, please don't hesitate to ask out loud, because it's a little clumsy to see if I don't notice it that somebody makes a comment through chat or something. It can, that can take a while. So I won't mind if you actually break in and ask me a question. Okay. The subject I called it the charm of Italian Jewry, rather than what should we say? What was it called? Hunting and dancing and stuff, which we will get to very quickly. Simply because Italian Jewry is much more than the Renaissance and the Baroque. I want to introduce you to a few things about the Jews of Italy, which you might not know, and which actually will help us to understand some of the phenomena that we're going to actually examine. So let's begin. When did Jews first come to Italy? Well, the first question is, what's Jewish in Italy? So when you think about things that are Jewish in Italy, aside from the fact that there are approximately 15,000 Jews in Italy today, although the community itself never had more than 35,000 Jews, although it was an amazingly important community. So it just shows you that quantity and quality do not necessarily go together. So first of all, we all know about the fact that the Jews were exiled to Rome after the fall of the First Temple. This is this is the famous bas-relief from the Arch of Titus, which was erected at the entrance to the Roman Forum by Domitian, by the brother of Titus, who actually destroyed the temple. The menorah, of course, we all know it's in the seal of the state of Israel, is based on the menorah that's found in the Arch of Titus, although the truth of the matter is that the base that we're all familiar with, if you look at the bottom of the of the picture is not the original base. That was, and actually Professor Daniel Sperber noted that that all of the sources that we have, including a lot of the graffiti that shows the menorah from the time of the temple, in other words, people that actually saw the menorah, testify to what the sources themselves say, that the menorah actually was sitting on three separate legs. This pediment at the bottom of the menorah was added by the Romans to allow them to carry it, to allow them to bring it to Rome. Where is the menorah? That's something that always comes up. Jewish papers like to always find, like, all around the world. It's a universal Jewish obsession. Is it in the basement of the Vatican, or who's got the menorah? Nobody knows. It might very well have been belted down. Ironically, there is no record of it. There's record of it leaving Rome, but never returning to Rome. In other words, when the Germanic tribes, when the Goths sacked Rome, and then finally, later when the Vandals took Rome, there's a record that they took the menorah to North Africa with them. And then the menorah was retaken by the Byzantines, by the Romans in the 16th century, and brought to Constantinople. But the Archbishop or the Patriarch of Constantinople decided that the place for the menorah was not in Constantinople or Istanbul today, but rather in Jerusalem. So the last place we know it was back here, was back in Israel. And after that, we don't know. But, so there were Jews, we know about the Arch of Titus. Those of you who visited in Italy, we're going to come to that a little bit later. You can see the ghetto. This is where the Jews were forced to live from 1555 until 1870. The last ghetto to be liberated, actually, we'll get to that also, was the Roman ghetto. Today it's a beautiful place with all kinds of kosher restaurants. And ironically, when the ghetto existed, the Jews would spend as much money as possible not to have to live there, which didn't usually work. And today you can't spend enough money to get in there. It's among the most expensive real estate in Rome. But the truth of the matter is, if you're looking for things that are quintessentially Jewish, this is probably the thing which is most quintessentially Jewish in Rome. These are cacciofi alla Judea, famous Roman artichokes, which you cannot get. You can't get this specific kind of artichoke anywhere out of Italy. They're on the menu of every single Italian restaurant, and if you haven't had them, then you must. And once the skies open and people can visit, I highly recommend it. But I'm being a little silly, because the truth of the matter is that Jews in Rome go back to a very, very early time. Jews start coming to Rome, at least officially, in the time of Judah the Maccabee. That's as far back. That's how far back things go. What you have on the left-hand side is a map of the Roman Empire as it existed at the time of the Maccabean revolt. What's important for us to notice is the section near Turkey, which is red, which was part of the empire, which was conquered by the Romans, at the expense of none other than Antiochus IV Epiphanes. In other words, the Jews were something of an irritant, but the Romans were a serious threat. Judah, when he running a guerrilla war in Judea and throughout Eretz Israel, he was a very shrewd diplomat, not just a good general, and he knew the primary diplomatic rule of in warfare, which is the enemy of my enemy is my friend. So he sent a diplomatic embassy to. Hold on, let me move this. He sent a diplomatic embassy to. I'm sorry, this should go back here. Sorry, to Rome, and they the nascent Judean state and the Roman Senate, this is before they were emperors, concluded a pact of perpetual and eternal amity and mutual defense. The terms of the treaty are cited in the Book of Maccabees, and this is what it says. And this is a copy of the reply they inscribed on bronze tablets and sent to Jerusalem to remain there with the Jews as a record of peace and alliance. May it be well with the Romans and the Jewish nation at sea and on land forever. May sword and enemy be far from them. But if war is first made on Rome or any of its allies in any of their dominions, the Jewish nation will fight along them wholeheartedly, as the occasion shall demand. And to those who wage war they shall not give or provide grain, weapons, money, or ships, as seems best to Rome. They shall fulfill their obligations without receiving any recompense. In the same way, if war is made first on the Jewish nation, the Romans will fight along with them willingly, as the occasion shall demand, and to those who attack them there shall be given no grain, weapons, or money, and so on. On these terms, the Romans have made an agreement with the Jewish people. Well, we know how that turned out. The truth of the matter is that it was a brilliant move on Judah's part, for the simple reason that what happened was the Romans moved troops to those red areas in Asia Minor, which is today Turkey, and threatened the border with the Greeks, with the Seleucid Greeks, and Antiochus, in order to be able to meet them, had to take forces he would have used against Judah to face down the Romans. So that actually took some pressure off of Yudah Maccabi. That's on the good side, and that helped really help to ensure the independence of the Jewish state, the Hasmonean state in Eretz Israel. The sad part is the fact that the Romans ended up conquering Eretz Israel because there was a civil war between two brothers who were claiming the throne of Judea, and the older one actually invoked this mutual defense clause in this treaty and invited Pompey Magnus, who was Pompey the Great, who was in Syria at the time, to please come in and help him. He came, he helped him, but most of all, he helped himself, and that was how Jewish independence ended. So, like I said, and then we know it went from bad to worse. But in any event, things started through this mutual aid pact. Why is that important? Because when two countries establish diplomatic relations, so you send an ambassador, he lives in a house, and goodbye. But when you send Jews, as Sir Isaiah Berlin once said, Jews are like everybody else, only more so. So what Jews need is always a lot more than what the average diplomatic mission has. So, for example, first they needed to bring a community. You need a shul, you need a shaychet, you need a moel, you need who knows what you need. So, the beginning of the community, the real established community in Rome, well, there might have been Jews there, before, was this diplomatic mission. And very early on, they built a shul, and the remains of this shul can be seen to this day. This is a shul in Ostia. Ostia was the port city of Rome. It's now inland. It's the original harbor silted in, but you can still see the shul. The shul was built around 110 BCE. It stood for almost 500 years. You can see a reconstruction of what it looked like on the left-hand side. Jews ended up not living so much in Rome as in Ostia, because Ostia was the port, and most Jews who came and moved to Rome, even before the exile, were merchants. So you want to live near the port. But look how beautiful! I mean, this is a computerized regeneration of what it looked like. You can see on the right-hand side that the shul is facing east. The door is facing east. If I can get to them, I can get my mouse to do what it's supposed to do. See if we can see here the person. Coming in, and you see that the shul is actually it's bounded by benches all around. This will remind you of Sephardic synagogues, for the simple reason that that's how originally shuls were built. In general, the way our shuls are built, or the way the way that synagogues are built, Sephardic synagogues are built, it very much fits the classic model. You'll see that there's no ark. The reason there was no ark is because synagogues, until the 3rd century, were also multi-purpose rooms. This is true around the world, and so sometimes they would have meetings there, and they have lectures there, and all kinds of stuff. And the ark was not built into the wall, but rather was kept in a box. It was a portable box, which was kept in one of these little rooms on the side. And when the time came for services, so they would bring the ark out, and then they would put it back. Okay, anyways, so this is the beginning of the community. It's important then to realize that the Italian Jewish community is the oldest established community in Europe. They're there longer than any other community, with the possible exception of some small groups in in southern France. But the truth of the matter is, that that there's no continuity of settlement. There has never been a time that, from the time of Judah the Maccabee, there's never a time that there weren't Jews in Rome, and that means that Roman Jews and Italian Jews in general feel at home. Now, not all of the Jews who are in Italy today consider themselves or feel themselves to be direct descendants of these people, although, according to legend, there were four families that were exiled by Titus from Jerusalem, four aristocratic families who were brought to Rome, and those families still exist. The De Pomis family, the Minatapuchim, the De Rossi family, about whom whose members, or two of whom's members, we'll talk about in a few minutes, the De Rossi family, the Del Iamansi family, and the Del Vecchio family. Those four families and they still exist, trace themselves back to at least Roman times. Now that's going to be very, very important in the sense of, I live here. This is home. My father-in-law was Polish, and he used to talk about that the family was 600 years in Poland. So here we're talking about 2,200 years in Italy. Okay. In any case, I'm not going to go through these parts. What's important, we're going to skip ahead. One of the things that set the Jews of Italy apart was the fact that even when the center of Torah learning moved to Babylonia, there were intense, ongoing relations between the Jews of Italy in terms of the way that in terms of their ritual practice, and in terms of their legal traditions. They were in very, very intense contact with the sages of Eretz Israel, both before and after the destruction of the temple. I'm just going to give you three little indications of that, which are actually kind of cute. Number one, there's a statement in the Talmud in Sanhedrin that says as follows: Tana Rabbanan. It's a bright, it's Talmudic text. Tzedek tzedek tirdof. You should always pursue justice. Halach achar olech achar chachamim liyeshiva. Follow sages to their yeshivot, which are places of study. And where were the leading places of study at in the generations after or the generation and a half after the destruction of the temple? Acharei Rabbi Eliezer Lud. Rabbi Eliezer ben Horkonos, his academy was in Lida, or in Lud. Achar Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai, he was in Bror Chayil. Acharei Rabbi Yoshua Pkiyin. Pkiyin, if you visited in the Galil, is the one place in Eretz Israel where Jews have lived continuously from the time of the Second Temple. There was a Mrs. Zinati there, Mrs. Margalit Zinati, who has actually never left Pekian. I mean, she's never left Pekian, and her ancestors never left Pekian. And there is the synagogue there is identified with Rabbi Yeshua ben Hanania. There are even stories that some of the stones that built the synagogue came from the Beit HaMikdash. Achar Rabban Gamliel liyavne. Achar Rabbi Akiva B'nei Brak. Rabbi Akiva lived in B'nei Brak, not B'nei Brak of today, further south, the original B'nai Brak, but more importantly, Achar Rabbi Matya L'Romi, that if you really want to learn, you go to Rabbi Matya ben Cheresh to Rome. Everything else here is in Eretz Israel. That's Rome. Rabbi Matya ben Cheresh was the first educational shaliach sent by the authorities in Israel to go and teach Torah in the Golah. They sent him to Rome to open up a yeshiva and to teach Torah to the Jews of Rome. So obviously the content was Eretz Israeli content. So the Jews would feel that an intense tie to Eretz Israel, and this comes to expression in a Yerushalmi. The Yerushalmi at the bottom tells the following story. This is again around the same time. Rabbi Lezer, the same Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Yeshua, and Rabbi Gamliel, Salkun LaRomi. They went up to Rome. They went obviously on diplomatic and on communal business, but they also went to teach Torah. That was part of the job. Alun Lechad Atar, and they went up to one place. Va'ashkechun Mainukaya Avdin Gavshushin. They saw a bunch of little kids playing in the sandbox. Va'amrin, and they were saying one to the other, Hachin b'nei Ared Yisrael Avdin. This is what the people in Eretz Israel do. Va'amrin, and so they went on. The little kids went on and said, Hahu truma hahin maser. So they had a big pile of sand. They were pretending that they were taking trumotu masrot, the gifts that one gives to Kohanim and Leviim, and they were playing out in with sand. And then the rabbis looked at each other and said, "It must be Jews here." But the point is that means that the curriculum of the Jews living in Italy was a curriculum of was a curriculum based on what was going on in Eretz Israel, not what was going on in Italy, because you don't separate Trumot and Masrot. If you raise tomatoes in Australia, you don't give it to the part anything to the Kohen or set it aside or whatever. Just eat the tomatoes. Same thing, but over here they were acting out as if they were living actually in Eretz Israel. I'm going to jump ahead a little bit. If you'll excuse me, this is obviously part of a longer talk. The ongoing connection between Eretz Israel and the Jews in Italy continued, but the Jews in Rome in particular felt themselves to be an established and serious community. By the 11th century, by the year 1000, they've already been there for 1150 years. Don't forget, or 1100 years. And you have all kinds of things. The Jews are established. They live in this area, if you look in the middle map, called the Trastevere, which is the opposite side of the Tiber from where the ghetto is today. It's really literally on the side of the Tiber. You have, we'll see in a minute, I'll show you now. There's a yeshiva. This building still exists in the Trastevere. It is the house of Rabbi Nathan of Rome, who wrote the first, he was exact contemporary of Rashi, a little bit older than Rashi, and he wrote the first Talmudic dictionary. So here you begin to get a sense of something else, that on the one hand, the Jews of Rome have their own community, but they're also something of transmitters of traditions, because all of the traditions of Eretz Israel come to southern Italy and to Rome. And they're incorporated in this dictionary, among other things, Rabbi Natan ben of Rome. But also from there, things are passed on northward. So Italian Jews from the beginning, they not only had developed their own sense of self, but they're also a place where different traditions, Jews from different backgrounds meet, and they fructify other communities. Let me go back here, just to tell you that on the what you see on the right-hand side is the Jews were so well established in Rome that we even had a Jewish pope. The guy on the right-hand side is named Anaclet II, and he was pope from 1130 to 1138. What happened was his great-grandfather, it was his grandfather. His grandfather was a guy named Baruch Pierre Leone. Baruch Pierre Leone was a young man in a hurry, and he decided that he couldn't really make it big if he stays Jewish. So he converted to Christianity and adopted a name, Benedictus Christianus. By the way, in general, if you find a person whose last name is Christian, odds are that he has Jewish ancestors. Because Christians don't have to name themselves Christian. Christians know that they're Christians. Only Jews will adopt a name like Christian, be able to wave a flag, "Hi guys, I'm one of you now," which always I always wondered whether Fletcher Christian, who had commanded the mutiny on the Bounty, whether he was he descended from Jews, because Marlon Brando is Jewish. I mean, think about it. Anyways, in any event, and his grandson Anaclet became pope, and it caused a tremendous controversy. Among other things, the man on the left-hand side, one of the great churchmen of the time, Bernard of Clairvaux, was running around the world saying, "Take that Jew off the throne of St. Peter." Now, halachically, Anaclet wasn't Jewish. His mother wasn't Jewish. But what was funny was what's ironic is that Bernard of Clairvaux was running around screaming, "Get that Jew off the throne of St. Peter," when in fact, if somebody should have mentioned to him the fact that Peter himself was, in fact, a Tiberian fisherman. He himself was Jewish. All right. In any event, again, there's this sense of you can feel yourself so much part of the Italian background that you can even aspire to be pope. Let me jump ahead here. Up until, actually, this I want to take a look. Our story, okay, that's sort of like an introduction. Our story really begins in around the year 1290. In the year 1290, this is Italy just on the edge of the Renaissance, before the Black Plague. Italy is there is no Italy. You'll see there's no united. Italy as a united country only was created in the 19th century as part of Garibaldi and Mazzini's efforts of what's called the Risorgimento, the reorganization of Italy. It's a bunch of different states surrounding key cities. Up until 1290, the Jews are concentrated in the south, in the Kingdom of Naples, as you can see. In 1290, the rulers of southern Italy were French. They were related to the King of France, and just as the King of France at the time, Louis IX, first Louis IX, and then his children, worked overtime to destroy Jewish life and to convert the Jews, so did their relatives in southern Italy. A series of anti-Jewish persecution broke out around 1290, and the Jewish life in southern Italy was destroyed. What's left there basically is the descendants of Marranos, of Conversi, who today in areas like in Bari, which is around here. Oh, I can't again. I'm having trouble with my thing. Down where it says the S of Naples, around there. Some of them want to come back to Judaism, but everything was destroyed. So Jews moved north. So the Italian Jews moved north. The Roman Jews also moved north because at this point, northern Italy is becoming highly developed. This is the period just before the Medici, when nascent capitalism is beginning and there's need for banking, and the Jews are needed as moneylenders, because lending money at interest is a mortal sin, but you need credit and you need money at interest. So why do you have Jews do it? Because the Jews are going to hell anyways. So as long as the Jews are going to hell anyways, we might as well have them lend money at interest, because so they'll go to hell a little bit more. It's not terrible. Meanwhile, we need somebody's going to lend us money. So Jews from Rome went into they followed the economic opportunity, and they moved north. At the exact same time, in the course of the 14th century, Jews start moving in from the north as well. From the northeast, they move in from Germany because there are ongoing persecutions because of the Black Death and other things. So they come to Italy looking for both safety and for economic opportunity. And when the Jews are thrown out of France on a number of occasions in the course of the 14th century, and the last expulsion was in 1394, they start moving in from the northwest, from Savoy over into Piedmont, which I don't think you can see on this map. Hold on a second. There you see. See where it says Savoy? So Savoy, the Jews are in Savoy, and that initially is where the Jews of France end up. Many of them end up coming, and then from there into Italy itself. So what makes Italian Jewish life really, really vibrant at this time, and also tension-filled, is the fact that not only the Jews are concentrating in northern Italy and becoming a major force in the economy, but also Jews from three different traditions come together. This is the first issue. This is the first example that we have historically of major migrations of Jews with different traditions, halachic traditions, liturgical traditions, different customs, trying to live together. And as you can figure out, if you had German Jews and French Jews and Roman Jews, and they all have to be in the same synagogue, you got to figure out how you're going to do stuff. It led to interesting encounters, but it also led to a lot of fructification, and even though the numbers were not large, as we'll see, the Jews go native very quickly. French Jews and Ashkenazi Jews are generally seen to be much more so we say conservative than Italian Jews, which is not 100% true, but as we'll see in a sec. So they all become transformed. French Jews and German Jews and Italian Jews, all of them sort of try to figure out how they can get along with each other. In addition, French and German Jews go native. They become more Italian. They feel themselves to be more Italian, and therefore they're exposed to Italian Renaissance culture. And in addition, they play a serious role in the local economy, and therefore they're protected. They're largely protected by the authorities because they need them, or maybe not. We'll see. Okay. By the way, later on, I just mentioned one more thing. Later on, in the late 15th century, when the Jews of Spain start leaving, even before the expulsion, and they come to Italy, they don't for a long time they don't really enter into the mix. Sephardic Jews, Jews from Spain and Portugal, viewed themselves as very, very aristocratic. And you have letters after the expulsion from Spain, for example, where Spanish Jews are saying, God, it's bad enough you expelled us from Spain. We expected the Mashiach was going to come to Spain, and then he was going to pick us up and take us to Eretz Israel, and then we'll take and let everybody else come. We are the aristocracy. We're the descendants of the elite of Jerusalem. They always talked about Galut Yerushalayim Asher B'Sfarad, the exile of Judah, which is in Spain, which is a verse in the book of Obadiah. And he says, it's bad enough you threw us out of Spain. But now you make us live with these barbarians, these Ashkenazim. In fact, it's not on the map. But there's a city, a very famous city, which became a major Jewish center called Livorno, Leghorn. Leghorn never let Jews live there, never, until the Spanish Jews came, because the Spanish Jews had money and the Spanish Jews had connections, so they were willing to let them live there as long as they did business and they were able to tax them. The Jews these Spanish Jews put up a condition before they came to settle that they would be happy to come and settle in Leghorn on one condition: don't let in Ashkenazim. We don't want to. We don't want to be. We don't want to be compromised by these barbarians who don't know philosophy and they don't know literature and they don't know science and they're not doctors. They're a bunch of, I don't know what they are, but so. In other words, in Israel that flipped. With the Ashkenazim, still there's a serious problem of anti-Mizrahi discrimination of one sort or another. I mean, it's a lot better than it used to be, but it cuts both ways. It's sort of like when my aunt, may she rest in peace, came home with Galitzianers, so my grandmother wanted to sit shiva because Litvaks don't marry Galitzianers, right? And among Syrian Jews, Shami Jews. I was recently in Mexico, and I was told by friends that there were two separate, beautifully developed communities. One is Damascus Jews, and one is Chalabi Jews. And until relatively recently, they didn't intermarry. But even the use of the word intermarriage is interesting. What do you mean? Everybody's Jews? No. If you're a Chalabi, you don't marry a Shami, and if you're a Shami, you don't marry a Chalabi. So this is a classic Jewish whatever. Anyways, so that brings the Jews into significant Jewish populations into northern Italy, into the center of Renaissance, of where the Renaissance is happening. There's a large Jewish community in Florence. I mean, Florence and the Renaissance goes together. Large Jewish community in the area of Milan, which is where Leonardo basically does his work. Large Jewish community in the Veneto, not in Venice proper, but in the area of Venice. So they're walking right into the Renaissance in the beginning. So now, after all that long introduction, let's take a look at how they integrated. Now, I will tell you in advance, because this is not the topic at the moment. We'll get to it in a few minutes. Where shall I put this? The one thing that historians do, which is wrong, or it's one of the misinterpretations of the Jewish experience in Italy that is distorted, is no matter what you're about to see, these Jews are all very, very, very observant. They do not cut corners. They sacrifice for their Jewish observance. And I mean, sacrifice, I mean, they pay a high price for it. They don't convert in large numbers, even though that was always offered to them. Nevertheless, with all of this piety and very powerful piety, let's see what the kind of involvement that Jews in this Renaissance world, where they're making money, lending money at interest, what they do. So I'd like to start with some music. We're not going to go. We're going to go by topic and not by and not chronologically necessarily. So let's start with music. I'd like to introduce you to a descendant of one of those earliest families that were exiled by Titus and brought to Rome, a man named Salomone Rossi. Salomone Rossi, Shlomo min Ha'adumim, who lived in Mantova. He was born in 1570, he died in 1630. He was a tremendously gifted musician. He was the Kapellmeister, the head of the orchestra, the musical director at the court of the Gonzaga, of Duke Vincenzo Gonzaga of Mantova, which was considered to be the most spectacular, glorious um, Renaissance and early Baroque court in Europe. It was dazzling in its luster. Look how this guy's dressed. I mean, it's unbelievable, right? I'm actually looking at him. I'm a little bit jealous because they haven't opened the. They haven't really. It's hard to get an appointment for a haircut in Israel today, even after Lag Bomer. So I mean, the fact that he could look like that makes me jealous. Anyways, he was the Kapellmeister. He was also the house. The house. I mean, De Rossi was the house composer. All right. I want to play a short madrigal that he wrote for the Gonzaga, and then we're going to compare it to something else that he wrote to give you a sense of the intricacy of the Jewish involvement in Renaissance culture. This is a madrigal that he wrote for Vincenzo Gonzaga. Can you hear it? Okay, so that's the madrigal. It's a long piece. Now, that was his day job. His night job was he was the musical director of the synagogue in Mantova. So let's go and see what he wrote for them. Okay. There were many synagogues in Mantova. This is the central synagogue on the left-hand side. He wrote a book called Shirim Asher L'Shlomo, which is obviously a takeoff on Shir Shirim. And this is one of the a number of the things that he wrote for the synagogue. This is his Kaddish. Now, first of all, there were women in this choir. Obviously, they used young boys in the synagogue. But if you didn't pay attention to the words, and you just listen to the music, it's the same music. Derossi writes the exact same kind of music for the synagogue as he composes for the court of the Gonzaga. And the truth of the matter is, while there were some people who took some umbrage at that, overwhelmingly the Jews said, no, why can't we take this incredible contemporary music and bring it into the synagogue in order to be able to make the the service more beautiful. And in fact, to this day, the Italian Jewish the Italian synagogues, especially the one in Rome, the way the shul in Rome, the synagogue in the central synagogue in Rome, the Tempio Maggiore, has an amazing choir, with pieces along the same kind of the same type. But there was a sort of sense that, no, what's the issue? On the contrary, when a Shiloh was asked of a contemporary Rav, can we have this kind of music in the synagogue? The answer was what? Who invented music? The Jews invented music. The non-Jews, the Christians, they stole it from us. We had the Levites in the synagogue and all this other stuff. Just like, what was it? The Israeli supposedly said, my ancestors were in the Temple of Solomon singing when you were painting your bodies blue. So the same thing is true. We were here first, so there's no reason why we can't just restore the glory of the synagogue service, and nobody saw any problem with it in the most sacred of contexts. Jews did, but that's where it started. That's just one expression. Jews were very, very, very deeply involved with Renaissance culture, with humanists. So here are three individuals, all of whom Egidio de Viterbo was actually a cardinal who lived in Rome, but Marsilio Ficino and Pico della Mirandola at the end of the 15th century were considered to be the greatest intellectuals of the Christian world. They were on the personal payroll of Lorenzo il Magnifico Medici. And so why am I telling you all this? Because they all had chavrusas. They were all sitting and learning Hebrew and Kabbalah, of all things, with Jews. Jews were invited to study with them, and they gave each other presents, and everybody, everybody seemingly got along. Out of the works of Ficino and Pico, not only do you have very famous pieces that they are essays and things that enriched the Christian tradition, there's a whole thing called Christian Kabbalah. I mean, Madonna did not start this. On the contrary, there's a big difference in Kabbalah and Kabbalah. And they didn't walk around with red little red threads on their wrists. But the Christians were convinced that you have to study Kabbalah as well, and the Jews were studying the Chavrusa. There was a man named Yochanan Alamano and another one named Eliyahu Del Medigo and others who were the teachers of these major figures. In addition, Jews took their knowledge of the general society, of general Renaissance culture, and tried to enrich Jewish culture by doing what they were doing with Jewish sources. So, for example, you have a man whose name was Yochanan Elamano that I mentioned. It was the teacher of Pico and Marsilio Ficino. He wrote a book called Shar HaCheshek, which is about the intellectual love of God, based on Plato. But he says in the beginning, he says that I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm not doing anything wrong. Why am I doing anything wrong? Because there was an old legend that said that Plato learned philosophy from Moses. I mean, the chronology doesn't work out, but that was the belief at the time. Or a cousin of Salomone Rossi. His name was Azaria Ben Aiuto de Rossi. Wrote a book called Sefer Me'orei Naim. One of the things that really characterized the Renaissance more than anything else was the fact restoration of the study of history. Now, Jews had never. It's hard for me, so I'm a historian, but Jews had never really cultivated history. We talk about if you read Jewish thinkers, if you read Bible commentaries, there's a lot of discussion of the meaning of Jewish life and the meaning of Jewish history. But to sit down and write this happened on this date and this date, this date, it does not really take off until the 19th century. It's a relatively new business. There were reasons for that, which maybe we can talk about another time. But one of the exceptions to the rule is this Azariah min Adomim, who was a first or second cousin of Shlomo min Adomim of Solomon Arose. He wrote a book called Ma'orei Naim, which was history, essays in Jewish historiography, because he said, look, if the Christians are looking into their past, we need to be able to look into our past to show that our past is not any less important and any less interesting than theirs. And finally, one of the hallmarks of Renaissance society or Renaissance culture was the cultivation of perfect Latin, and later on Italian or Tuscan, basically, more correctly. And you find that there's tremendous interest in having Jews, men and women, by the way, having Jews write Hebrew properly. So you have here one of the earliest Hebrew grammars written by a man named Elia Bocher, who also wrote one of the earliest Yiddish writers as well, called Sefer HaTishbi. Eliyahu HaTishbi. And it wasn't by Elia HaTishbi, it was a guy by Elia Bocher. But more than that, Jews, just as Renaissance Jews, just as Renaissance Italians cultivated their literary style, Jews imitated them and tried to cultivate their Hebrew style. But what's really interesting is that they insisted that you have many cases where Jews write poems alternating lines in Hebrew and Italian with the same rhyme scheme. And that actually says a lot about how they viewed themselves as part of the Renaissance, part of the Renaissance tapestry in which they lived. But it wasn't just intellectual stuff. You have a man whose name was Judah Sommo Portaleone, whose cousin or uncle was a major Rav. His name was Yehuda Aryeh, not Yehuda Aryeh, Meir Misharyeh. Was a drama theorist and I forget what they call it. He was a director and producer. So the first thing he did, one of the things he did, which is still a book that's still studied to this day, Quattro dialoghi di materia sceniche, four dialogues about how to put on a play. Which is one of the earliest books of dramatic theory ever written. He wrote it in Italian. Okay. On the other hand, he also wrote plays, and he wrote plays for Jews. One was called Tre Sorelle, three sisters, and a play in Hebrew that was given in Hebrew called Sachut B'dichuta de Kiddushin. It's a comedy. It's a comedy which is one of the most valuable sources to say about daily life in Italy, which tells you a lot about the people. Jews, certainly educated Jews, knew how to read and write and understand a play that was given in Hebrew. The play is so good. It was about 10 years ago. It was restaged in Israel in contemporary context, but it's just it's a stunning piece of work. Okay, Jewish dramatists at this point they're in the ghetto. Jews are involved in dance. There is an unknown dance master. His name is Guglielmo. Probably his name was Zev. Left behind a book called Trattato dell'arte del ballo, a tract about the art of the dance. You have here a picture of typical Renaissance dancing. So you say, all right, so he wasn't part of the community. Well, he wasn't, so whatever. Jews didn't know how to dance. Not true. Because Jews did know how to dance. So here, I hope the rabbis will forgive me for a moment, because I'm about to expose you to certain things that was going on in Italy that ostensibly prima facie were dicey, but we'll see or not. In the year 1507, the Ashkenazi, very very religious neo-Haredi, or sort of like what's the word? Not neo-Haredi, but sort of like he would be Haredi today. Rabbi of Padova, which is in the Veneto, Rabbi Yehuda Mintz issued a bunch of ordinances. One of those ordinances was this: Gam gazarnu al anashim. We also declared shelo yirkeduim anashim anesuot, that men should not dance with married women Shum zachar nekeva netzua. You can't marry with somebody else's wife. You can't marry somebody else. Good. Of course you can't marry somebody else's wife. You can't dance with somebody else's wife. Milvad bimei Purim, except on Purim. Purim, everything goes. Omnam, however, they can dance with non-married women in Makliyot. ובתנאי שיהיו הזכרים מלובשים מלבוש אחד למעלה מהז'פונה, באופן שבית התורפה יהיה מכוסה לפחות, וכל מי שיש בידו למחות ימחה, והעובר על זה יעבור על דת יהודית. In other words, if the men want to dance with the non-married women, they have to be dressed appropriately. Otherwise, it's not sanua. It's interesting. Why is what they're wearing bother them, but the dancing doesn't bother them? Because the word dance doesn't always mean dance. And when we talk about dancing, it's not the same. How do I know? Because we have pictures of women dancing. We have pictures of Jews dancing. This is a famous illumination from one of the most famous illuminated manuscripts in Jewish history, the Rothschild Miscellany, which was created in northern Italy in 1460. And this is a picture of a Sheva Brachas. This is a picture of a Sheva Brachas in someplace in northern Italy. It's part of the Marzur. It's part of a Marzur, which was part of the. It was like it's a communal. It belongs to the community, and you see three couples are dancing, and on the right hand side you have somebody's accompanying them with some kind of a lute or a mandolin. Notice the way they are dancing. First of all, it's clear that these are married couples because all the women are covering their hair. By the way, one of the other ordinances that was put out by Rabbi Yehuda was to ban wigs, to ban shaitlach. He said they're not modest, they cost a fortune of money. They are absolutely not what our mothers and our grandmothers did. The only modest way for a woman to cover her hair, and she has to, is to wear a kerchief or some kind of variation on a hat. Okay, so you know that these are married couples dancing. That's number one. Number two. So what Rabbi Yehuda was saying was, I'm going against certain violations of the norms that were going on in Venice. Number one. Number two. Notice the way they're dancing. Notice the way they're dancing. In all three couples, the married wife puts her hand under her her husband's arm. It's not even clear that they're touching because dancing up until the 18th century, up until the invention of the waltz, did not involve touching, or did not have to involve touching. It was an art form, which was considered to be a very elegant art form, and in fact, if touching was involved, many people thought that was a violation of the integrity of the dance for nefarious purposes. When men and women would dance, often they wouldn't. Again, even if it was a matter of doing like a do-si-do or moving around, they didn't touch each other. They would hold their hands like this, so that yes, they would be related. Their relations in the hands, but they wouldn't necessarily touch. So we're talking here about dancing. We're not talking about the kind of dancing that we're talking about in the 18th, 19th, what we call social dancing. Mixed dancing did not exist. This was line dancing, where there was a dance master and he's directing traffic and telling people go here and go there or whatever. And it absolutely has no sexual innuendo whatsoever. And 90% of the time had absolutely no touching. So it's against that background that we're talking about. That we're talking in the ordinance. But these are typical Renaissance and Baroque dances. In fact, some scholars have used these Hebrew manuscripts to be able to try to recreate how did Italian Christians dance in the Renaissance. And in fact, we know from a sponsum of a tshuva of one of the most important rabbinic authorities in the 16th century in Corfu, which is part of, we know about Corfu because they bring etrogim from there. But his name was Rabbi David HaKohen. And he mentions the fact that they used to have, without music apparently, they used to have dances Shabbos afternoon. And you would just like an activity, like, I don't know, do you have Shabbat groups in Australia? I mean, when my kids were small, we sent them to Shabbat groups in the afternoon. So this is what they would do, people. This was the entertainment, but it's not the kind of dancing that we're talking about. But again, this is taking there was a natural segue of things that were going on in the regular society into the synagogue. This is, as I said, a picture apparently from a Sheva Brachot. Jews were dressing like everybody else. Jews were dressing like everybody else, and therefore Jews got very, the rabbis and the communities were up in arms because Jews were spending, they were attracting attention of the Christians, and they were attracting Christian objections that the Jews were too showy and they were too flashy and so on. And so here, we're not going to go into the details, but here you have two ordinances against men and women wearing too many rings and wearing too much fur and wearing too fancy clothes and wearing gloves that are very expensive because it's not appropriate. It's not appropriate to spend money for that kind of luxury expense, and also because it attracts attention and attracts Jew hatred. In fact, so perhaps here is what I'm going to bring in the downside of some of this. Jews, at least until the time of the ghetto, lived on borrowed time in Italy. Italian Christians got along with Jews, but there was a tremendous amount of, or there could be a tremendous amount of anti-Jewish activity. So you had to watch it. And Jews were allowed into the cities of Italy and the towns of Italy on short-term contracts. 1 year, 2 year, 5 years, 10 years, renewable, but with an escape clause of with a week's notice, 2 weeks notice, you could end the contract, meaning you were living on a 2-week contract. So they had to be very careful. Yes, it's true that they're part of the scenery, but it was very clear that the outside world is not a friendly world, it's a hostile world. Okay, but also for inside purposes, here you have a picture of an Italian wedding. I don't know if the German Jews still do this. This is chuppah. You see this? You see the chassan kala? There's on the right hand side with the Jew hat is the chatan. On the left hand side is the kala, and instead of having a canopy, they put a talus over them. That creates the chuppah. I'm sure in Australia you don't have this problem. In Israel we have it. Well, now we don't because we can only have 10 people at a wedding. But Israelis like to have 800 people at a wedding, 1,000 people at a wedding, whatever. And in Italians and Italian Christians were famous for their festivals as well. And the Jews apparently spent fortunes of money on smachot. So the communities in Forli, for example, in 1415, came together and said, you know what? You got to put a cap on this because we're getting to be too much like them. For example, he writes as follows. This I want to read together. We have also seen that people who make weddings and make parties spend too much money on them, make them too large. And they spend more money than they have. More, in fact, than the rich Goyim spend that we live among. And we lose a lot of money, and people go bankrupt as a result. And therefore, we have agreed that from the end of, this is actually Sivan, from the end of the month of Sivan, 1418, until 1486, no Jew of our communities can invite for a wedding more than 20 males, 10 women, five unmarried women, whether they lived in the city or they come from out of town. And also you can only invite relatives until second cousins, including second cousins. That's it. No more. We have also agreed that when it comes to a bris, you can't invite more than for the meal after the brit milah. You can only invite 10 men, 5 women, in addition to the immediate family. That's it. So apparently Jews were going native, or they even doing more than the Christians were doing. And if you want to take a look at any Renaissance movie, you can see what kind of parties they were talking about. Jews, okay, so here, but everything up till we've seen here has been, I don't know, what should we say, has been more or less within the field. But Jews also did stuff that Jews don't do. Christian Italians loved to go hunting. And Jews went hunting. I mean, Jews hunting? Jews don't go hunting. I mean, first of all, it's a problem. It's a question of you can't eat the meat anyways. If you kill the deer with a spear or with an arrow, you can't eat it anyways. Jews go hunting. They go hunting for fun. We know, for example, that there was a man, his name was Meshulam de Valtera, who was a very pious person. This guy, Meshulam de Valtera, was one of the earliest people to start a trend of Italian Jews moving, either visiting or moving permanently from Italy to Eretz Yisrael. Meshulam de Valtera went to Eretz Yisrael twice on pilgrimage. On one of the occasions, he bumped into a man whose name was Ovadia Bartanura. Ovadia Bartanura, the famous Rabbi Ovadia Bartanura, the famous commentator on the Mishnah, who upped and made Aliyah, moved to Yerushalayim. We about 30 years ago they found his grave. It's at the bottom of Har HaZeitim. And this guy, Meshulam Valteri, he went because he made a vow to God to thank God for all the good things he'd done to him. He was going to put his life on the line and go to Eretz Yisrael. It was a dangerous business, but he went. So he's a guy of piety. Nevertheless, Meshulam de Valtera was he used to go hunting. Not only to go hunting, his hunting partner was Lorenzo de Medici, the head of the Medici family, the person who is known as the godfather of the entire Renaissance, and the two of them went hunting. And it wasn't considered to be totally odd. Now, there were rabbis who had problems with this. So you want to dance. You want to do this, but you're going to go hunting? So consistently, rabbis said, "This is, there's a limit. There's a limit to how many outside things can come in." So here you have a responsum. It's a little late for our period. It's the end of the Baroque. This is a tshuva, a responsum by a rabbi named Shamshon Morpurgo, who lived in Ancona on the eastern coast of Italy. He actually was from Morpurgo is actually shows that he was from a German family from the German city of Marburg. In any case, he writes as follows: Shamo nishmal merachok. I have heard shmeim chochma musar tiferet bachurim. I've heard all kinds of wonderful reports of the quality of your children, and I'm stunned that they're going hunting. What Jew goes hunting? How can you be cruel to it's cruelty to animals? He's like, I don't believe it, but it was just a given. And here on the left-hand side, you have a picture just of a typical Renaissance hunting scene. Okay. What time is it? Rabbi? What time do you want? How long do you want to go?
Getting a little bit late. How much longer do you think you need, Rabbi?
I'm sorry, I can't hear.
It's getting a little bit late. How do you feel?
Okay, so I'm going to just raise one issue and leave it at that. So the question is, you have all of these Jews who've ingested and adopted so much of Renaissance culture in their lives. What does that say? What does that say about how they saw themselves, about their religiosity, about the strength of their religiosity? Are they assimilating or are they not assimilating? That's really the issue. And the truth of the matter is that among Jewish historians who were desperate to have Jews become part of Western society, the Jews of Italy were like some kind of a they set an example for them. Look at them. We can be like everybody else, and we can keep our religion in the synagogue, and we can be like everybody else, and we can be a little less religious. We can be more modern. We can be more liberal. This was the line among many historians in the 19th, 20th centuries. The person who really who put this, I think, most forcefully, was a man whose name was Professor Cecil Roth, really the founder of modern Italian Jewish studies. He was a professor he was a reader at Oxford, then he came to Israel. In a passage that he loved so much that he quotes it twice in his writings, he saw Jews living in Italian Jewish culture among Italian Christians as what's called convivencia. Everybody likes everybody else. We all get along, we all love each other, everything's fantastic. And he writes the following paragraph. For it must be remembered that the Italians, means the Italian non-Jew, temperament is no less volatile than versatile. As recent years have demonstrated, he's talking about the Nazis, he can easily be stirred up to a frenzy by an orator who plays on his sentiment. But these moments of passion cannot last for long, and when they are past, he reverts to his easygoing, indolent, friendly self. I don't know if the Italians would like this, indolent. Sometimes a bloody riot might be caused by the inflammatory flow of rhetoric from the pulpit by a priest. But after the wave of feeling had ebbed, and the series of sermons was ended, and the friar who had caused the riot had moved on to another city, the frenzy would die down as suddenly as it had risen. The Jew repaired his broken windows, and the needy plebeian again began to bring his valuables in the hope of raising money. And there would be laughter and singing and perhaps drinking in the streets, and somber ecclesiastics would once again begin to mutter at the excessive cordiality, and would again be true that in no part of the world did such a feeling of friendliness prevail as in Italy between the people and the Jews. Oh, everybody loved everybody else. Occasionally there were pogroms. What's a few pogroms among friends? we all love each other. Or as the previous chief rabbi of Rome, Elio Toaf, once told a group of visiting American Italian public school teachers, Cristiani, ebrei, non è una differenza, noi siamo tutti italiani. Christians, Jews, there's no difference. We're all Italians. Okay, so according to him, what made all this possible was what he started with, that the Jews felt at home, and the Jews felt they were as Italian as they were Jewish, and everybody got along. Occasionally there'd be some fanatics, but it was okay. You have to ask yourself, they loved each other so much, so how come they were so given to pogroms and so on? So the answer is he was, what's it called, wishful thinking? Because the truth of the matter is, what made all of this cultural borrowing possible actually was the opposite. We don't have time to go into the details, but the case, the proof of what I'm about to say was the following case. In 1469, a very, very senior Italian rabbi, whose name was Yehuda Messer Leon, was actually knighted by the Holy Roman Emperor and was allowed to wear a cape, which designated him as a knight, as well as being a senior doctor. Okay, because that's what he was. He was a doctor, aside from being a Rosh Hashiva. He was a Rosh Hashiva and a doctor, but he was knighted for his medical activities, and he was allowed to wear a certain cape. What was the cape? So take a look at the cape. These are the on the left-hand side, on the right-hand side. These are pictures of Jewish doctors. That's in the Middle Ages and in the Renaissance. That's how they dressed, in these sort of like flowing robes. The robe that Messer Leon was allowed to wear, which was unique, was this. It's called the kappa. Okay, if you notice, it's called the kappa manicata, and it is an academic robe which is based on a bishop's robes. So Messer Leon was allowed to wear this, and it was a sign that he had been knighted, and he was a senior doctor more than anybody else. But he walked into shul one day, and they see him dressed like, and they see the Rosh Hashiva is dressed like a galach. He's dressed like a priest, and it was very. There was a big tumult. So they write to a man who's named Rabbi Yosef Kolon Marik, who was the senior, really the leading posek at the time, the leading rabbinic authority. Can you wear these clothing or not? And this led to an entire long discussion, which became normative in halacha as to under what circumstances can you adopt non-Jewish things and under what circumstances can't you. I don't want to go into the details right now. What's important for us is as follows. His conclusion was as follows. The general rule is, he says, that if a person is adopting an outside practice or an outside form of dress because he wants to pass, he wants to appear to be Italian Christian, he wants to assimilate, he wants to meld into the larger society, that is why the Torah says you cannot imitate the non-Jews. What is prohibited is religious imitation and sociological imitation. However, if you're adopting things and these things are neutral, or they are for your personal advancement, like as in the case of this cape that the Messer Leon was wearing, because it was sort of like a walking advertisement that he's an expert physician. That's not a problem, because his inclination is not because he wants to be shown to be a Christian. It's because he wants to tell the other Jews that in fact he's a good doctor. It happens to be that this is the way to do it. But again, if there were the least inkling that there's an assimilationist desire or a desire to show oneself to be Italian in these actions, then anything that you would try to adopt from the outside world would be prohibited. What do you see from this? What you see from this is that had Roth been right, or had what I sort of implied before, had it been true that the Jews were including all of these things from the outside world because they felt themselves to be just as Italian as they were Jewish, I sort of set you up. I know it was coming, right? Then that would be absolutely prohibited. But his learned judgment in the beginning, in the middle of the Renaissance, in the time of Lorenzo de Medici, actually of Cosimo de Medici, is that Jews actually do what they do because they want to enrich Judaism. They want to enrich us without any connection with the non-Jews. On the contrary, I mentioned this before, one of the more interesting things that consistently comes up is that Jews justify, all right, the hunting's a problem. Jews justify their broader secular studies. They justify dancing. They justify music. They explain everything that we're talking about on the grounds that we are talking about endemic native Jewish activities, which perhaps had gotten lost, but we are restoring. If anything, the non-Jews stole things from us, and we are returning them. Whether it's music, whether it's philosophy, whether it's dance, whether it's drama, it doesn't matter. These are native Jewish things which we are restoring. And on the contrary, that one of the striking things that appears throughout the period among rabbis and lay people in their writings, they keep saying the consistent theme is that we are culturally superior to the Italians, and therefore we can't be seen to have things that they don't have because we're better than they. In other words, it wasn't a question of I feel inferior, so I want to be like them, so I want to be, accept me. On the contrary, we are superior. They come to us. They come to us to study drama. They come to us to study Kabbalah. They come to us to study Hebrew because they know that Hebrew is more authentic than Latin or Greek. And they come to us to study music. And they come to us for this and not to that. So you see that from this, these are things which they admire about us. If anybody is on the receiving end, it's not we, it's they. So that, in other words, a sense of distance and of superiority was what allowed, actually, for Jews to be more open culturally. You could accept more because you were actually felt a greater sense of distance and a greater sense of superiority. This begins to change in the time of the ghetto, for reasons that I've yet to be able to figure out. Dafka, when Jews are forced to live in the ghetto and they become permanent residents and nobody's going to expel them because these temporary contracts are no longer in use, Jews begin to feel like feel more and more that they are part of Italian life. And then when the emancipation comes, so does mass assimilation. So the irony is that when Jews are actually involved wholesale in adopting and integrating outside things in their lives, it's because of their sense of superiority and separateness. Once once they're living on their own, separated from everybody else, they feel more Italian. It's one of the great mysteries of Jewish history that I've yet been able to. The chief rabbi of Rome, Rabbi Dissigny, recently, about 2 years ago, when I was sitting in his office, asked me, "How did that happen?" I said, "I have no idea. It's a tremendous. I have no idea. I have no idea, and I've yet to be able to have anybody suggest a possible or a reasonable answer." Okay, what we've seen here is I'm not going to. So what we've seen here is an ancient community which still exists. It's fascinating. It's open and it's closed. It's here and it's there, and it's in many senses. I don't know if I hope this got across. In many senses, it is very much like our community. because we live here and there. We live in and we live out, and we feel superior, we feel inferior, and we feel and how we exactly evaluate our lives within the broader Western culture context is precisely the cultural issue that we face on an ongoing basis. So that's part of the fascination of Italian Jewish life. This dynamic still goes on in a very different way. I have to put. I promised I would. I mean, unfortunately, right now we can't visit. There's nothing more. I mean, seeing the sites, the Italian Jewish sites, is just stunning. If you take a look, if you've been to Venice, on the right hand side, you have a picture of the Beit Knesset Sfaradi, the main Espagnolo in the Venetian ghetto. This it's interesting. This synagogue was built with but it was designed by Christian architects, built by Christian builders on purpose, because they wanted to show that, like Annie Oakley, anything you can do, I can do better. That our synagogues are just as beautiful as your cathedrals. So that's where a certain amount of competitiveness comes in, and they're all over the place. In fact, I have a friend, I mean, if you're interested, a very dear friend of mine is named Michaela Pavoncello. She runs a group, an organization called, or a business called Jewish Rome, and she has been putting up on the web virtual tours of Jewish Rome, which if I can send the link to the rabbi, and he's more than happy to. You're more than welcome to send them out if you're interested. In any case, I don't get any percentages. It's just something I promised I would do because it's something that's really brings things close to what we have. I find that if we want to understand our life and the challenges that the outside world and the modern society poses for us, that very often the precedents and the answers are found in the past. And I think that in this community, you definitely see many potential and suggestive ways that we can live our lives and understand the world in which we live. So thank you very much. I hope I didn't overstay my welcome. If you want, if there's a next time, which I'd be happy to, I can keep it within a certain time frame.
Well, Professor, thank you so much. It's been really enlightening. I mean, I personally knew very little other than about the Ramchal and the Maram Padua. I knew very little about the Rabbanim and the Bartanura. So it just has really opened up my eyes a lot, and no doubt everybody else as well. So thank you so much for giving of your time. We really appreciate it. And
My pleasure.
We look forward to having you back in the not too distant future.
My pleasure. So health and happiness, and just end this. Let's get back to normal.
Amen. Thank you very much, and it should have a meaningful Lag B'Omer by you, and Laila Tov from us.
Same to you. Laila Tov.
Thank you.